In a world where silence has replaced life and the sky bleeds red with the memory of war, one girl lies in the ashes, ready to die, her only companion lifeless in her arms. But just as the last breath slips away, a stranger arrives. And what comes next isn't the end. It's the beginning of something no one believed possible. This is a story of survival, of love that defies death, and of a second chance that could change everything. Stay with us, because hope is about to rise from the ruins. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move to this wonderful story. The sky was an unnatural red, its hue deepened by the thick dust swirling in the air. The forest had once stood tall and proud, but now it was a graveyard of broken trees and smoldering ruins. The branches were shattered as if crushed by giant hands, and the earth beneath was cracked and barren. Not a single sound could be heard, save for the soft whistling of the wind, which carried with it a strange emptiness. The wind did not blow with any strength, and the silence was heavier than it should have been. It was a quiet, unlike any natural. Quiet, unnerving and unnatural. Luma lay on her side among the remains of what had once been a thriving forest. She could barely muster the strength to lift her head. Her body was weak, every inch of it aching from the blasts, the burns, and the exhaustion. Her arms were wrapped around something small, something warm yet lifeless. It was her pet Nevo, a creature that had been by her side since the day she had arrived on this planet. Nevo's fur, once vibrant and blue, was now a dull gray, dirtied by the ash of destruction. Luma could feel the weight of the small creature in her arms, its body no longer twitching or stirring. Its breathing had stopped hours ago, and with it, Luma's last shred of hope seemed to have faded away. Her tears had run dry. She had wept until there was nothing left but an emptiness inside her. The loss of her people, the destruction of her home, and now Nevo, her only companion, had left her hollow. She whispered softly to the small creature in her arms, her voice barely audible. "You were brave. You stayed with me when the world ended." The words trembled as they left her lips. "I'm sorry I couldn't protect you." Luma closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the silence around her. Her bones ached, and the pain was almost unbearable. Her skin was burned in places from the blast, and her stomach had been empty for 2 days. The only thing she could think of was how tired she was, how much she wanted to just close her eyes and let go. She didn't want to die, but she had no strength left to keep fighting. There was nothing left for her. Her home was gone, her people were gone, and now even Nevo, the last part of her past, was gone. All that was left was the unbearable quiet. Then, just as Luma began to give in to the stillness, a sound cut through the air. It was low, like the hum of metal against rock, distant but sharp enough to catch her attention. Her ears twitched involuntarily, and she opened her eyes just a little. Her gaze scanned the wreckage, and that was when she saw him. A figure emerged from behind the twisted, broken remains of the trees. The figure was tall, dressed in dark armor that glinted faintly in the dim red light. His helmet reflected the strange sky above, and his movements were slow and deliberate, as if he were unsure of what he might find. He didn't carry a weapon. Instead, he held something else, a device that looked like a scanner, moving it from side to side as if searching for something in the ruins. Luma's breath caught in her throat. A human? She wasn't sure what she expected to see, but it wasn't this. She didn't care anymore. She didn't want to care. The human's presence made no difference. She was too far gone, too broken. The world had ended, and nothing, not even a stranger, could change that. The figure stopped a few feet away from her and crouched down. "Hey," he said, his voice clear but tentative. "You're alive." Luma said nothing. She didn't have the strength to answer, nor did she care to. The man's words seemed to hang in the air for a moment, but she let them go. The human didn't seem to mind her silence. Instead, he took another slow step forward. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said, his voice soft, as if trying to reassure her. "My name's Darren. I'm here to help." Still, Luma remained motionless. She didn't trust him. She couldn't. Trust had brought her nothing but loss, and she had no more room in her heart for hope. The human knelt beside her, his eyes scanning her face before they landed on Nevo. His expression shifted, and for the first time Luma saw a flicker of emotion in his eyes. Concern. "Is that a pet?" he asked softly, his voice barely above a whisper. Luma nodded, her throat tight. "She was my heart," she whispered, barely able to form the words. Darren looked around at the devastation surrounding them. "What happened here?" he asked, quietly. Luma didn't respond immediately. She could barely find the energy to speak. She closed her eyes again, her fingers brushing the small creature in her arms. "They came from the sky," she said, her voice low and tired. "No warning. They didn't want land, they wanted silence." Darren's face grew more serious as he scanned her body, his eyes narrowing as he took in the burns and the brokenness in her posture. "You've got burns and cracked ribs," he said, his voice matter-of-fact, though there was still concern in his eyes. "You shouldn't even be conscious." "I'm not," Luma whispered. She felt herself slipping away, but she didn't want to die here. Not like this. She didn't want to be just another casualty of a war she didn't understand. Darren shook his head. "No, you're not dying here. Not like this." He pulled something from his belt, a small medical spray, and pressed it gently against her neck. Luma flinched weakly, trying to push it away, but she was too weak to resist. The medicine hissed as it began to work, and within moments the pain began to fade. Her body started to feel lighter, but it didn't erase the emptiness in her heart. She was still alone. "Why?" she asked again, her voice barely above a whisper. Darren looked at her with tired eyes, as though struggling to find the right words. "Because you're the first living person I've seen in 2 days. I thought I was too late. I'm not walking away from this." He gently lifted Nevo from her arms and cradled the small creature in his own hands. "I'll carry her too," he said, his voice softer now. Luma's hand reached out, trembling as she touched Nevo's tail. "Be gentle," she whispered. "She's still—" But then, a tiny twitch. The tail moved again. Darren froze. "Did you see that?" Luma's eyes widened. Could Nevo still be alive? Darren's eyes searched the small creature. Slowly, cautiously, he looked back at Luma. "She's alive," he said quietly, a note of disbelief in his voice. The faintest sound came from Nevo, an almost imperceptible chirp. It was weak, but it was enough. Luma held her breath as her fingers brushed across Nevo's cheek. Against all odds, her pet was alive. And maybe, just maybe, so was she. Darren held the small creature gently, cradling it as if it were made of glass. Nevo's fur still looked lifeless, but there had been a movement, a flicker of something, a twitch of the tail. It was almost too small to notice, but both he and Luma had seen it. Luma's breath had caught in her throat. Her heart, long numbed by pain and grief, stirred. She couldn't believe it, didn't dare believe it. Yet there Nevo was, her little companion, showing signs of life in a world that had forgotten how to live. Luma tried to sit up, but her strength failed her. Darren moved quickly to support her, placing an arm gently behind her back and helping her rise to a sitting position. She leaned against a broken piece of metal, her body trembling from exhaustion and relief. Her eyes never left Nevo. "I felt her heart stop," she whispered. She was gone. Darren glanced at the creature, again. "Well, it's beating now," he said softly. "Something's keeping her going." He looked around. The sky was still painted in dust and red light. The ruins of the forest groaned quietly as wind moved through them. There wasn't much time. This place was not safe, and if Nevo was alive, if Luma was to have any real chance, he needed to get them both out of there. "My camp's not far," he said. "I have shelter, clean water, and food. We'll rest there. You need more medicine, too." Luma didn't argue. She didn't ask questions. She didn't have the energy to doubt him, and something inside her trusted this stranger more than she expected. Maybe it was the way he spoke. Calm. Honest. Or maybe it was the way he had picked up Nevo without fear or disgust, as if the little creature mattered. Luma nodded faintly and reached for her pet. Darren handed Nevo back carefully, watching as Luma held her against her chest, listening for the heartbeat that had returned. They moved slowly through the ruins. Darren offered his arm, and Luma leaned on him with each unsteady step. Her legs felt like they no longer belonged to her. Every few feet she had to stop and catch her breath. The ground was uneven and littered with broken metal, shattered stone, and twisted roots. The red sky above them never changed, and the silence was unnerving. It was as if the world itself was holding its breath. Luma whispered stories as they walked. Not full ones. Fragments. She told Darren about Nevo's favorite food, about how she used to chase the sunbeams in the tall grass, how her voice used to be loud and playful. She spoke of the festivals her people once held, when lights danced in the trees and laughter echoed through the woods. Darren listened quietly. He didn't interrupt or try to steer the conversation. He just listened. That alone seemed to give Luma strength. "You said they came from the sky," he said after a while. Luma nodded slowly. "We didn't see them coming." One moment the air was calm, and the next there was a scream like metal tearing the sky apart. They didn't speak. They didn't ask. They just erased things. They wanted everything quiet. Darren's face darkened. "I lost my team 2 days ago. We were sent here to investigate the first wave. Only I made it out." Luma looked at him, her eyes full of quiet sadness. "You're alone too." "Not anymore," he replied simply. They reached the ridge just as the light began to shift slightly. It wasn't sunrise. The sky still burned red, but a shadow moved from the clouds, offering a brief relief from the heat. Darren helped Luma sit on a rock and opened a pack. He gave her a pouch of water and a protein bar. She drank slowly, then took small bites of the bar. It was the first food she had tasted in 2 days. Her body wanted more, but she forced herself to go slow. Nevo stirred again. This time her ear twitched and a tiny sound escaped her throat. Luma looked down, her mouth falling open in surprise. "She's waking up," she said softly. Darren leaned closer and scanned Nevo with his wrist device. "Vital signs are improving. Slowly, but definitely better." Luma held her close, her voice trembling. "She came back. I don't understand how." "Maybe love does things science can't explain," Darren said, half smiling. They sat in silence for a moment, listening to Nevo's weak but steady breathing. The warmth of the moment was interrupted by a sudden rustle in the trees below. Both of them froze. Darren stood quickly and peered over the ridge. His eyes narrowed. "What is it?" Luma asked, her voice low. "I don't know," he said. "But something's moving." She tightened her grip on Nevo. "One of them?" Darren didn't answer right away. He knelt beside her, his voice barely above a whisper. "Let's move. Slowly. Quietly." They started walking again, heading toward a narrow path hidden between the rocks. Darren had scouted it earlier. It led straight to the shelter he had built. As they walked, Luma looked up at him. "Why are you really helping me?" she asked. Darren was silent for a moment. Then he spoke. "Because sometimes saving someone else is the only way to save yourself." Luma didn't respond, but her steps felt a little lighter. She looked down at Nevo, whose eyes blinked weakly. The little spark was still there, and it gave her something she hadn't felt in days. Hope. The air grew heavier as they walked, as if the world itself was warning them to turn back. The narrow path between the rocks gave them some shelter from the wind, but it also made Luma feel like the walls were closing in. She held Nevo close to her chest. The small creature was warmer now, her tiny breath steady, though still weak. Luma could feel the life returning, slow and fragile like the first leaf of spring after a long winter. Every step forward felt more important than the last. Each one brought them closer to safety, but also closer to something unknown. Darren walked just ahead, scanning the surroundings with his wrist device. His eyes flicked from side to side, always alert. He had seen enough of the enemy to know they never came with warning. They never announced their presence. They just appeared, quiet, cold, and deadly. He was trained for these moments, but nothing could prepare anyone for the way these things moved. They weren't machines, not really, and they weren't alive either. They were something in between, something twisted. They reached a small clearing where the broken forest opened slightly. Darren raised his hand, signaling for Luma to stop. She paused beside a large, cracked stone and waited as he scanned the area. The screen on his wrist blinked, then beeped, softly. He froze. His body stiffened as he crouched lower, motioning for her to do the same. "What is it?" she whispered, barely making a sound. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he pointed toward the far edge of the clearing. At first, Luma saw nothing, but then something moved. Too smooth, too silent to be natural. A black shape slid across the ground, not walking but gliding. It had no legs, no face, just a glassy surface that reflected the red sky above. Its body was long and fluid, like a ribbon made of shadow and steel. It made no sound, not even as it passed over dry branches. Luma's breath caught in her throat. Her fingers gripped Nevo tighter. The creature in front of them didn't look like a hunter, but every part of her body screamed danger. Darren's voice came low and tense. "That's one of them. A crawler. It's hunting." She felt her heart pounding in her chest. The last time she had seen one, it had destroyed everything in minutes. It moved without mercy, without pause. It didn't speak. It didn't even look at what it destroyed, it just did. Darren pulled her closer, shielding her with his body. He whispered, "Don't move. Don't even breathe loudly." The black shape paused as if sensing something. Its head, or what passed for one, tilted slightly. It had no eyes, but Luma felt like it was staring right at them. She didn't move. Neither did Darren. Even Nevo stayed perfectly still in her arms. After what felt like hours, the crawler slid behind a broken tree and out of sight. Darren let out a slow breath. "We have to take it out," he said. Luma looked at him in shock. "You want to fight it?" He nodded. "If we run, it will follow. They track movement. If we surprise it, we might have a chance." She looked down at Nevo, who gave a tiny whimper. Her fingers brushed the creature's fur gently. "We just got a chance to live again. I don't want to lose it." Darren's voice softened. "Then trust me. I've done this before. We time it right. We can stop it." From his pack, he pulled out a small metal device, a short, stubby cylinder with blinking lights. "EMP grenade," he explained. "Fried one of these things before. It doesn't kill them, not always, but it buys time." Luma nodded. "What do I do?" "Stay low. Keep Nevo safe. When I give the signal, cover your ears and shut your eyes. Don't move until I say." She hesitated, fear holding her still. But then she remembered the blast, the ruins, her people gone in moments. She had survived that. Maybe she could survive this too. Darren crept forward, silent as a shadow. Luma crouched behind the rock, holding Nevo tightly. Her heart pounded so loud she thought the crawler might hear it. She watched Darren slip around the edge of the clearing, moving into position. The crawler reappeared, slithering toward a pile of debris. It moved slowly, cautiously, scanning for sound or heat. Darren waited, hidden behind a jagged tree trunk. He held the grenade in one hand, finger on the pin. He didn't blink. Then it happened. A loose stone rolled down the hill. The sound was small, but enough. The crawler turned sharply in Darren's direction. He didn't wait. He pulled the pin and tossed the grenade just as the crawler surged forward. "Down!" he shouted. Luma buried her head and covered Nevo's ears. A sharp hum filled the air, followed by a sudden white flash that swallowed everything. There was no explosion, just a powerful silence, a deep vacuum that seemed to suck all sound from the world. When she opened her eyes, her ears were ringing. The sky had lost its color for a moment, replaced by a glowing white haze. She looked up and saw Darren crouched over her, shielding her with his body. He was breathing hard, but he was alive. She blinked through the light, searching for the crawler. It was no longer moving. A melted pile of glass and black metal oozed into the dirt, twitching slightly, then stopped. Darren got to his knees, still watching the remains. "It's down," he said. "But we don't stay here." Luma nodded, tears in her eyes, not from fear but from something else. Relief, gratitude, hope. She looked down at Nevo. The small creature was trembling, but she was still there. Still alive. Still hers. The silence after the blast felt different. It wasn't just the absence of noise, it was thick and heavy, like the world itself had paused. Dust floated in the air, glowing faintly in the leftover light from the grenade's burst. Darren stood, slowly, his ears still ringing. His helmet flickered as the systems reset from the electromagnetic pulse, but he didn't care. His eyes searched the clearing for any sign of movement. The black crawler was gone, melted into a pile of twisted metal and soft, strange tissue. It didn't move. No sparks, no pulse. It was finally over. He turned back to Luma, who was curled around Nevo, her eyes wide but alert. Her skin was pale and her hands trembled, but she was alive. She looked up at him as he knelt beside her. Is it gone?" she asked, her voice weak. Darren nodded. "Yeah, we got it." She looked down at the creature in her arms. Nevo was still breathing, her chest rising and falling slowly. But something was different. Luma felt it before she saw it, a soft warmth beneath her fingers like a quiet energy. Nevo's fur shimmered slightly, a pale light flowing just under the surface, like water moving beneath thin ice. Luma blinked. Her heart beat faster. "She's glowing," she whispered. Darren leaned in, confused. He scanned the small creature with his wrist device. The screen lit up in strange colors, patterns he didn't recognize. "That's new," he muttered. "Her energy levels are rising, but it's not mechanical. It's something else." Luma could feel it too. Nevo's body had changed, but not in a way that felt wrong. It didn't feel like the darkness that came with the invaders. This was something gentler, like the first light of morning. She wasn't afraid. Instead, she held Nevo close and whispered, "You're still you. Just more." Darren stood and helped Luma to her feet. She wobbled but managed to stay upright. They both stared at the place where the crawler had died. Its body had fallen apart, not like a machine, but like something that had been held together by will alone. Now it was nothing more than chunks of burnt shell and melted circuits. It looked empty, like it had never really been alive. "We should keep moving," Darren said. "This thing might have sent a signal before we hit it." Luma nodded and followed him, still carrying Nevo. Her legs were sore and her body heavy, but each step forward felt easier. As they walked through the cracked land, she looked up at the sky. The red hue hadn't faded, but there was something new near the horizon, a softer glow, almost like a sunrise. It didn't make sense, not in this broken world, but she didn't question it. The ridge sloped downward until it opened to a wide field of blackened grass and stone. In the distance, a small structure stood half hidden under a rocky overhang. Darren pointed to it. "That's the shelter. Not much, but it'll keep us out of sight." They reached the building just as the wind began to pick up. The shelter's door slid open with a creak, and Darren helped Luma inside. The space was small but clean, with a bedroll, a power cell, and a storage crate. He handed her another water pouch and watched as she drank carefully. Then he knelt beside her again, this time not as a soldier or a rescuer, but simply as someone who needed to understand. "I've seen what those crawlers do," he said quietly. "They change things, corrupt them. I've never seen something survive contact, let alone come back stronger." Luma looked down at Nevo, who now lay quietly, her fur glowing softly. In the dim room, I think she resisted because of our bond, she said. The others, they turned because they were alone, forgotten. Nevo wasn't. She was loved. She remembered who she was. Darren sat back, thoughtful. If that's true, it means there's still a way to fight this, a way to reverse it. Not just destroy, but heal. Luma looked up at him, hope slowly returning to her voice. You said you fix things. Maybe this is how. He gave a tired smile. Yeah, maybe it is. They stayed in the shelter that night, listening to the wind scrape gently against the walls. Luma finally slept without fear, her hand resting lightly on Nevo's back. For the first time in days, her dreams were not filled with fire or silence. Instead, she saw her people again, laughing, dancing under the trees, and Nevo chasing lights in the grass. In the morning, the sky was still red, but the horizon had changed. The glow had grown brighter, like a promise just beyond reach. Luma stood beside Darren, Nevo perched weakly on her shoulder. What will you do now? Darren asked. Luma stared into the distance. I'll help fix what they tried to break. I'll help others remember who they are. He looked at her and nodded. Then we do it together. As they stepped out of the shelter and into the ash-covered world, Nevo let out a soft chirp. It echoed faintly across the field. A small sound, but clear. It was the first sound of life in a place built on silence, and with that breath, tomorrow began.